udaram nirabhidyatah.
Jyoti Mataji, can you scroll, please? Thank you. Hare Krishna, Jyoti Mataji.
Hare Krishna. The veins of the universal body became manifested, and thereafter the red corpuscles or blood. In their wake came the rivers, the deities presiding over the veins, and then appeared an abdomen.
Shutpipase tatasyatham samudrastvetyorabhut athasya hridayam bhinnam hridayanmana utthitham.
Next grew feelings of hunger and thirst, and in their wake came the manifestation of the oceans. Then a heart became manifest, and in the wake of the heart the mind appeared.
Manasa chandrama jato buddhir patihi ahankarastato rudram chittam chaityastato bhavat.
After the mind, the moon appeared. Intelligence appeared next, and after intelligence, Lord Brahma appeared. Then the false ego appeared, and then Lord Shiva. And after the appearance of Lord Shiva came consciousness and the deity presiding over consciousness.
Ete hibhyutitha deva naivasyothapane shakan punaravivishu khani tamuthapayitum kramad.
When the demigods and presiding deities of the various senses were thus manifested, they wanted to wake their origin of appearance. But upon failing to do so, they re-entered the body of the Virat Purusha one after another in order to wake him.
Vahnirvachamukham bheje nodatishtattha virat gnanena nasike vayu nodatishtattha virat.
The god of fire entered his mouth with the organ of speech, but the Virat Purusha could not be aroused. Then the god of wind appeared. The god of wind entered his nostrils with the sense of smell, but still the Virat Purusha refused to be awakened.
Akshini chakshushadityo nodatishtattha virat shrotrena karnau chatisho nodatishtattha virat.
The sun god entered the eyes of the Virat Purusha with the sense of sight, but still the Virat Purusha did not get up. Similarly, The predominating deities of the directions entered through his ears with the sense of hearing, but still he did not get up.
त्वचं रोमभिरोषध्यो नोदतिष्ठत्तदा विराट् रेतसा शिश्नमापस्तु नोदतिष्ठत्तदा विराट्.
The predominating deities of the skin, herbs and seasoning plants, entered the skin of the Virat Purusha with the hair of the body, but the cosmic being refused to get up even then. The god predominating over water entered his organ of generation with the faculty of procreation, but the Virat Purusha still would not rise.
गुदं मृत्युरपानेन नोदतिष्ठत्तदा विराट् हस्ताविन्द्रो बलेनैव नोदतिष्ठत्तदा विराट्.
The god of death entered his anus with the organ of defecation, but the Virat Purusha could not be spurred to activity. The god Indra entered the hands with their power of grasping and dropping things, but the Virat Purusha would not get up even then.
विष्णुर्गत्यैव चरणौ नोदतिष्ठत्तदा विराट् नाडीर्नद्यो लोहितेन नोदतिष्ठत्तदा विराट्.
Lord Vishnu entered his feet with the faculty of locomotion, but the Virat Purusha refused to stand up even then. The rivers entered his blood vessels with the blood and the power of circulation, but still the cosmic being could not be made to stir.
क्षुद्रव्यामुदरं सिन्धु नोदतिष्ठत्तदा विराट् हृदयं मनसा चन्द्रो नोदतिष्ठत्तदा विराट्.
The ocean entered his abdomen with hunger and thirst, but the cosmic being refused to rise even then. The moon god entered his heart with the mind, but the cosmic being would not be roused.
बुद्ध्या ब्रह्मापि हृदयं नोदतिष्ठत्तदा विराट् रुद्रो विमत्या हृदयं नोदतिष्ठत्तदा विराट्.
Brahma also entered his heart with intelligence, but even then the cosmic being could not be prevailed upon to get up. Lord Rudra also entered his heart with the ego, but even then the cosmic being did not stir.
चित्तेन हृदयं चैत्यः क्षेत्रज्ञ प्राविशद्यधा विराधदैव पुरुषः सलिलादु दतिष्ठत.
However, when the inner controller, the deity presiding over consciousness, entered the heart with reason, at that very moment the cosmic being arose from the causal waters.
यथा प्रसुप्तं पुरुषं प्राणेन्द्रियमनोदियः प्रभवन्ति विनायेन नोतापयितुमोजसा.
When a man is sleeping, all his material assets, namely the vital energy, the senses for recording knowledge, the senses for working, the mind and the intelligence, cannot arouse him. He can be aroused only when the Supersoul helps him.
तमस्मिन् प्रत्यगात्मानं धिया योगप्रवृत्तया भक्त्या विरक्त्या ज्ञानेन विविच्यात्मनि चिन्तयेत्.
Therefore, through devotion, detachment, and advancement in spiritual knowledge acquired through concentrated devotional service, one should contemplate that the Supersoul as present in this very body, although simultaneously apart from it.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Thank you, Madan Prabhuji and Jennifer Mataji, for the very nice recitation. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for everyone for joining. And thank you, Jennifer Mataji, for your lovely recitation. So today we are going to be, I will continue and I will facilitate the next part of the session, which is going through verses 69 to 72. So as we come to the end of this chapter, which is principles of material nature, sorry. This is a conversation that Lord Kapila is having with his mother Devahuti. So in the last chapter, he's spoken about the glories of devotional service, and in this, he specifically speaks about how the material universe has been created in very graphic detail, as you would have seen in the previous verses. So the way we would look at today is, when we come to the end of the chapter, it's always good to reflect on the summary of of what's transpired in the previous verses. And then we will also look at the cosmic being, because the Virat Purusha has been referred to a number of times. And as you heard today, there are many efforts of the entities to wake up the Virat Purusha, but they don't really succeed. It only gets succeeded right towards the end, and then that will help us to look at the verses that we're going to discuss today, and what really are the key messages that these verses have for us, and also what does Prabhupada speak about these verses. So we'll begin with the Mangalacharan, and please do join me. ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनाशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवंश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगना रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपदान् सहगना ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेशा गोपिकान्ता राधाकान्ता नमोऽस्तुते। तप्त कंचन गौरंगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नम ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिन् इति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पश्यता देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर शिवासदि गौर भक्त वृंदा हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 रामा राम राम हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 रामा राम राम हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय. So, Hare Krishna, everyone. So, today we are going to be looking at verses 69 to 72, Canto 3, Chapter 26. So, as I mentioned, we are going to first look at what is it that Lord Kapila has been, sharing with his mother Devahuti since the start of the chapter. So, as I've split it up into a few, key themes, and we will explore that, and then we take that forward. So, let me just bring up my notes. So we are on the principles of material nature, which comes just after after Lord Kapila has spoken about the glories of devotional service. So in the first 16 chapters, what Lord Kapila has been sharing with Devahuti and with all of us, he explains the fundamental components of creation. So we understand how the material universe really came into existence, and and a key part of that would be Sankhya philosophy is an analytical study of the material universe, and this chapter is a good example of how Lord Kapila brings that philosophy to life. So he explains the Sankhya philosophy. So what he does in the first few verses would be to look at listing down the various material elements and what their origins are. So we see the 24 elements, which are which he has spoken about, the gross elements, the subtle elements, then also the which includes the sense objects, and then finally the three modes, which is which is the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. And what the Lord also says is that the living entity, which is like soul or jiva that resides within us, is distinct from matter, but it's influenced and it becomes conditioned because of the material nature, and that's through false identification or false ego. And ego is represented by Rudra, as a deity, as we would see later on in the chapter as well. And there are references that Lord Kapila makes about the manifest and the unmanifest. And the unmanifest factor, in terms of the creation of the universe, is time or kal. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna also says that I'm kal, I'm time, and essentially, what we can understand from this is that time is also, or Kal is the energy of the Supreme Lord. And what it does is it causes transformation in material nature. And and this can see, we can see this very apparently, because if you look at your photographs, say about 10 or 15 years ago, you will see that time has played a role, and the way our body looks like, our abilities, everything like undergoes like a change. I was very recently in the Hu Peninsula, which is towards the east, and we were taking a walk, by by the sea, and there were also cliffs, and you could see how the rocks, has been going through a lot of weathering, due to due to wind and salt, etc. So you can see that time has got a real transformative impact on material nature, both the living entities and also elements. And then you can see what it also does is this time and this temporal, this perception that we are all temporal and everything is temporary, also causes a fear of death. And by this fear of death, which is one of the greatest phobias that that we can have as a living entity. It's just not about the pain, but it's also a lot about like letting go of what we think we are, and that comes from the nescience that that we are the body, and because we associate ourselves with matter, we bind the soul, which is eternal, which is Satchitanand, to the body, and the false ego is what really binds us as a knot, and that's what creates this fear of death, which if you really which is one of the most like prevalent phobias. And essentially what Lord Kapila is saying, that true knowledge and true realization really comes from our ability to be able to distinguish spiritual spirit, which is the soul, and understanding the quality of the soul as compared to matter. And once we not just understand that at a knowledge level, but once we start realizing it, that's when our fear of death will slowly ebb away. We can't say that it's going to, completely disappear overnight, but then it's really going to help us deal with death, when we encounter it. Then from verses 17 to 32, what the Lord speaks about is he speaks about his role, and what he says is that material nature is powerful. So we do know that Prakriti is very powerful. However, it is the inferior energy of the Lord, and it acts under the guidance of the Supreme Lord, and the Virat Purusha. And how he creates this entire universe, all he does is he glances over. His glance is enough. And if he doesn't glance, then there is no possibility of creation to to be for this world to be created. So he glances over material nature, and then he also injects in the the living souls, because he's there in every atom as Shiro Dakashai Vishnu. So he pervades not only across all the universes, but also within the living souls, and he resides in each one of us in our bodies as the Paramatma. So although he resides within us, he's not really part of us. So, and that's again something that it's important for us to realize, not just understand as a knowledge, but really to realize. And then Lord Kapila also says that this entire process of creation is quite cyclical, because as we know, we have the yugas, and then there is this manifestation that happens, and there is a maintenance, and then there is a destruction that happens at the end of like Kali Yuga, for example, and then and then it goes all over again. So what this happens is that this is the interplay between Ishvara, which is the Lord, Jiva, which is the living entities, and then Prakriti. So, and the Bhagavad Gita, speaks of these three as very very important, like topics. And then what the Lord also says in these verses is that of all the forms of self-realization, there are lots of forms of yogas, by which we can get self-realized. But devotional service or bhakti is the only way by which you can transcend this material entanglement and this science that we are the body and we are not the soul, and we keep forgetting that all the time, as we go through our activities in this life. And then from 33 to 53 onwards, what the Lord speaks about is the how did the universe get evolved, and how did our body get evolved. And so what we see is that there is a matter, there are the various elements and forms in the universe, and then there are the three modes. So you have the elements on one side, the 24 elements, the cross elements, the subtle elements, the sense objects, the senses, the objects of senses, etc. And then you have the material, you have the modes of nature. So they combine to create those elements, and then that's how the various sense organs, the mind and the intelligence are created. So we do know that there are number of 432, thousand living species. And how do these various bodies look like? These various bodies have so much of different qualities, and each one of them are equipped to lead a life in this material universe in a very different way. So, for example, if you see a cheetah. Cheetah is, like the fastest animal, and it's supposed to be quite a wondrous creature because, given its heart, I mean, and its ability to accelerate, when it sees its prey is something that is a constant, like wonder to the, to the human mind. So how do those all those bodies really get created, where each one is very suitable, for the environment, like the chameleon as an example. So what it does is it changes colors to really, blend with the surroundings, so that hunters, it can really, cheat the hunters. So how does all this really develop? All this develops because of and how do we acquire those bodies is based a lot on our karma. For example, if our propensity is to eat a lot, as an example, and it doesn't necessarily have to happen that way, but then we do know that there are some forms of creatures which eat a lot, like, for example, pigs, etc. So it's quite possible that that could be the body that you take the next time. So but that's just an example of how our karma can dictate, and of course our desire can dictate what kind of bodies that we take. And then we see that as we look at the universe, we can see that there is this macro world, and the macro world is comprised of the universe. So we can see the galaxies, the planets, etc. And then we also see the microscopic one, the atomic level, the bacteria, the one-celled organisms. So they all develop from the same elements. And if we just look at things from a material senses, it can be quite intriguing that how can a planet and a paramucium, for example, is made of the same elements. But that's really the wonder of the Lord's creation. So what the Lord says here is that the body and the cell and the cosmos are really designed to help our material experience. But using a material experience, how can we really move to higher levels of consciousness? And that's where Krishna consciousness really comes in. How do we really get to a stage where we use our human life to reach that ultimate realization of understanding who we truly are? Because as animals, as other living creatures, or as other bodies, we may not be able to have the same consciousness as we have when we are human beings. And the fourth and the last part, which is really around the subtle and the gross functions of the living entity. And here's where Lord Kapila, shares a very detailed, he gives a very detailed explanation of the minds, the senses, and how do they really work, and how and what is really the process by which the soul and the matter interact with each other. And in this, you can see, the Lord speak about the functions and the various transformations of the body and the senses under the modes of nature. And what the Lord also says is that although the soul is covered by the material energy, and that is it's quite easy for us to delude ourselves that we are indeed in the body, but the soul is transcendental, and it can come back to its original consciousness, which is Krishna consciousness through devotional service. And the Lord also says here that nothing really happens in this world without his witnessing and without his sanctioning of the activities. So those were the four aspects that Lord Kapila speaks about. And somewhere in 62, in verse 62 onwards or 61 onwards, he starts talking about the cosmic being, or the Virat Purusha. So I think it'll be helpful to really understand a little bit about what this chapter speaks about, like as a cosmic being. So the cosmic being or a universal form is it's quite important for us to recognize that it's not a form that is material in nature. It's a form that's completely transcendental, and in the Bhagavad Gita, it's there are very few personalities who have really seen the Lord's universal form. Arjuna is one of them in the Bhagavad Gita, and you can also like remember his complete like shock and over overwhelmed when he really saw the Lord, because he could see so many he could see the Lord being very ferocious. He could see the impact of time. He could see the devas. He could see his ancestors. He could see just about everything and everyone. And it's important to know that all of us, which are the living entities, are all integrated, and so we are all part and parcel of this cosmic being. And the reason why we really suffer in this particular material world is because we think of ourselves as being independent of of the Lord, and that is something that we do need to guard ourselves against. And the universal form is also a way for us to contemplate our own relationship with the Lord, and how we play the role of a steward and not really the proprietor, and how it's really the Lord who who creates, maintains, and destroys the universe, and nothing really happens without his sanctioning. So a few things to know about the cosmic being is that it's, as I mentioned, not a material form, but it's a representation where all the parts of the creation really comes together into one divine form, transcendental form. And we can also say that the law of nature does not really apply to this particular form, because he's much beyond. The laws of nature, or the material or the modes of nature, are the Lord's inferior energy. What it will also help to do is, as we saw as we read the passages today, is that um, each each one has got serves a particular limb, and a limb or a function within the universal body. So we can never be independent of the universal body at all. So so that's something to just be broadly aware of, and the way the cosmic form manifest themselves will be when the Lord glances upon Prakriti, and then he activates this creation, and then he also maintains the all the cosmic functions. So whether you see the planets which are moving across around the sun, or the galaxies, the growth of life. I mean, for example, spring is coming now, and as we look around, we can see a lot of beautiful flowers blossoming, and you can see life starting to thrive after after a dreary winter season. So all this really is being sanctioned by the Lord, and there is also the flow of time that is quite irreversible, that happens. So we can never get back to our youth. We always are going just in one direction when it comes to flowing of in the flow of time. And and then he also his function is also for pralay, because when the dissolution happens, then he withdraws the form, and then all the elements returns back to the original state, and within the Lord. So any reflections so far? Because then we will move on to the to the awakening of the cosmic being, that has been discussed from verses 62 onwards till 71. Any reflections or any questions?
Yeah, sort of. Hello, Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank you so
Krishna.
much for sharing. I'm new to Krishna consciousness, so I'm sorry if my questions and my thoughts are really, really small.
No, no, not at all,
It's
Jennifer
interesting.
Mataji. So, and that is no question which is small. We are all spiritual seekers.
Thank you. I was reading something yesterday. It was a Romanian philosopher. I've forgotten his name. But it was interesting because he was saying that actually we're afraid of death, and the real problem is we're not afraid enough of rebirth. So he's a nihilist, Emil Kioran, I think his name is. So it was a really interesting idea because his insight was, everything's terrible, but there's no hope at the end. But I think what I take away from ISKCON, from Krishna consciousness, is that actually the Bhagavatam in the Gita offers solution. So as we move forward in our service and our knowledge, then the fear of death starts to disappear a little bit. But I was just interested in what you think about that, because it really struck me that the fear of death keeps us alive in some ways, and I totally get that. But maybe we think about that too much almost at the expense of thinking about the fear of rebirth. Perhaps we do that because we identify so much with the body, and that's why it's so easy for us to have a fear of death rather than a fear of rebirth. So I just wondered on your thoughts. I'm still struggling with this. I haven't got it quite right in my head, but it'd be great if you had any sort of thoughts that would help me to understand.
So,
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So, firstly, I think that's a very interesting, topic, and I think you explained that really beautifully. So, yeah, so definitely, we are born with the fear of death, and a lot of it, as I briefly mentioned at the start, is because of the pain that's associated with it, because of the loss that one may feel, because of the fear of letting go. Almost like, like if you're taken away from this life, you know no other. And a Western thought and some philosophy really thinks of this life as being the only life, and in Krishna consciousness and in Oriental like religions, it's always about rebirth. And what Prabhupada says is that Srimad Bhagavatam, which is what we are reading now, is if you really look at it, it's about preparing yourself for death and your life. It may seem a little counterintuitive because why would you want to spend your life preparing for death? It doesn't seem right. But if you really go a little deeper and contemplate on the like on what it really means, how does the Srimad Bhagavatam, like how does it really come to us? It's Lord Parikshit Maharaj. I mean, and he knows that he's going to disappear from this planet in the or he's going to leave his body in the next 7 days, and so he wants to really use that particular time to understand, to really glorify, to hear about the pastimes of the Lord. And while he's doing that, he's also getting a detachment from his material world. So a lot of what you mentioned, Jennifer Mataji, is really around the fear of death comes because, as you mentioned rightly, that we associate ourselves with this body, and when we get the knowledge that we are not really the body, then it can help us to understand death from a different perspective. And when it comes to a fear of rebirth, which is an interesting thing, because we don't even come to looking at rebirth because that's so far away, from our time perspective. Although we don't realize that it can happen much closer to us than we realize, because we all try to lead lives in a way where we are complete. We are going to be here forever. We build homes. We continue to build bigger homes. We continue to amass a lot of wealth, but we don't really know how long we are going to be there to even enjoy that in the first place. So, and that's why that is the fear of rebirth is what is really going to help us to make the right life choices. And one simple example is that eating meat, for example. So a lot of my friends, they don't find anything wrong in eating meat, and um, But then when you look at it from the point of view of rebirth, and when you know that you're going to come back to this lifetime, and you will have to serve your karmic like debts. So even if it doesn't, even if you get even if you don't suffer the reactions in this particular lifetime, you might suffer it in the next one, but then you will still suffer, and then that could be quite painful for you. So why would you want to make life choices that's going to like get you stuck up in this life of birth and death? Because if you don't clear your karmic debts, then it's going to be quite difficult for you to break the cycle of birth and death. Krishna consciousness says that even if you have sinned, if you perform devotional service truly with the sincerity of your heart, Krishna says that, and he does, gives a guarantee in the Bhagavad Gita that abandon all religion, come to me, and I will deliver you of all your sinful reactions. So very briefly coming back to what you mentioned, fear of death, yes, something that we acknowledge does exist in this world, and because that's what is being made very popular, and that's what you hear all the time. But what is more important for us, as spiritual seekers, and as someone who's really wanting to go in the Krishna conscious path, is to really fear rebirth. And because you fear rebirth, what you will do is you will make the right life choices that helps you to detach yourself from this material world and attach yourself to Krishna.
Hare Krishna, that's really helpful. Thank you so much.
And thank you so much for the question. So, anyone else? Okay. So, now we can move on to the last part, which also brings us as a prelude to this particular these four verses, and this is about from verse 62 onwards. That is the awakening, or there is an intent or a desire for the living entities to awaken. So the material universe has been formed, and from verse 62 onwards, the deva, the divinities, they have started to wake up the Lord, wake up the Virat Purusha, and so all the parts, and as you read through this, you can also see how each of the bodies also represent a certain like a deity. For example, Brahma is like aligned to intelligence. Rudra is with ego, false ego, and then so on. The sun is the eyes, because he brings the light. So you can see that there is a lot of it's good. It'll be good to read through that, because then you know which are the deities who are presiding over which of our sense objects. And so you have the preceding demigods, they understand their limitations, and what they do is they try to wake up and activate this universal body, this cosmic body, this Virat Purusha. But the cosmic being does not arise at all. And we will see in this particular verses what really awakes him. So with that, a rather long prelude, but I hope it just gives a good introduction and also summarization of what Lord Kapila has mentioned. We will move on to verse 69. So let's quickly let me bring it up on my screen. So hopefully you're able to see this well. So I will read out the Sanskrit, and I'll invite maybe one of you to read the translation. Buddhaya Brahma Hridayam Nodatishtathada Virat Rudro Bhimatya Hridayam Nodatishtathada Virat. So you can see that there is a very you can see that this particular line has been repeated quite a number of times, and as we go through the word by word translation, what it says is um, uh, uh, So this is separated as so no that tishtat is na uttishtat. So it's like two words, which is combined together, which is called sandhi in Sanskrit. So not did not arise. Tada is even then, and Virata Purusha. So you can see that there is a lot of intention, there's a lot of efforts being made by the various entities, right from Lord Brahma to everyone to wake up the Lord, but he does not awake. So let's move on to the translation. And would somebody like to read this?
Can I read, Prabhuji?
Yes, Mataji.
Thank you. Translation by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Brahma also entered his heart with intelligence, but even then the cosmic being could not be prevailed upon to get up. Lord Rudra also entered his heart with the ego, but even then the cosmic being did not stir. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, thank you. So it'll be helpful to look at what who are these presiding gods. What are they responsible for? So Brahma, he enters his heart with intelligence. So we can say that Brahma is the presiding god of intelligence, and that intelligence, and that's why even when you see him, see his picture, and you can see how he's depicted. So he's depicted with the with a manuscript, which is basically the Vedas. So all Vedic wisdom, all intelligence can be attributed and presided over by Brahma. And he's also the first um, he's also the first being that gets created, that the Lord creates in the material universe. And if you remember, he also, like when he is initially created, he's also trying to make sense of what this world looks like. And the way he communicates with the Lord is not by speaking to him, but it's always in his mind. It's only and that's again coming from the fact that it's only when you look within, and when you contemplate within, that's when you can truly connect with with the Paramatma, or the super soul, in this case Bhagwan. And but even then the cosmic being could not be prevailed upon to get up. And then Lord Rudra entered his heart with the ego. So we can say from here that the presiding deity of the ego is Lord Rudra. And even then, the cosmic being did not stir. So let's continue. Verse 70. Chittena hridayam chetya kshetrajna pravishadyatha viratadeva purushaha saliladu tishtata. Would someone like to read the translation of this one?
Shall I read it, Prabhuji?
Yes, Sushamataji.
However, when the inner controller, the deity presiding presiding over consciousness, entered the heart within reason, at that very moment, the cosmic being arose from the causal waters. Hare Krishna, thank you.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much. So this is when the cosmic being wakes up, the inner controller. So this is the deity presiding over consciousness. So if you recall, uh, I believe it's in verse 60 or 61. That's when the deity who's presiding over consciousness, gets manifested, and it's the last deity which gets manifested. So the inner controller, which is also the superior energy, the deity presiding over consciousness, when this deity enters the law and enters the heart, at that moment the cosmic being arose from the waters. So what this means is that this speaks about the importance of consciousness, about how um, when we think of we think of consciousness as we think of it, we take it for granted. For example, when we wake up, perform chore, our various, if, errands. We are conscious, and we do take our consciousness for granted, and we do not realize that the consciousness to do things, for example, um, uh, to sit in a chair and and hear this particular lecture, for example, for me to be able to talk to you, to have a conversation with you on the Srimad Bhagavatam. Everything requires a certain consciousness, and which we take for granted. So it is so, sometimes things are so pervasive that you miss seeing it. And it's like when you see so many trees in the forest, you kind of think of the trees, but you miss the fact that it's a forest. And so the DT presiding over consciousness is something that we, on a day-to-day basis, we don't really reflect or meditate on as much as what we should be doing. And but when this deity entered the cosmic being, he rose. He rose from the from the causal, what is the ocean of milk. So let's continue. What happens after this? Take 71. Yata prasuptam purusham pranendriya manodiyah prabhavanti vinayena na nothapayitu tumojasa. This has got, the last two verses has got both the translation and the purport. So could we have another devotee read the translation and the purport?
Can I read, please, Prabhu?
Yes, Ashwini Mataji.
Translation. When a man is sleeping, all his material assets, namely the vital energy, the senses for recording knowledge, the senses for working, the mind and the intelligence, cannot arouse him. He can be aroused only when the super soul helps him. Shall I read the purport?
Yes, please.
Purport. The explanation of Sankhya philosophy is described here in detail in the sense that the Virat Purusha, or the universal form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the original source of all the various sense organs and their presiding deities. The relationship between the Virat Purusha and the presiding deities, or the living entities, is so intricate that simply by exercising the sense organs which are related to their presiding deities, the Virat Purusha cannot be aroused. It is not possible to arouse the Virat Purusha or to link with the Supreme Absolute Personality of Godhead by material activities. Only by devotional service and detachment can one perform the process of linking with the Absolute. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Prabhupada ki jai. It's a very short purport, but it's a very profound one. So let's go back to the translation. So what this verse says is that when a man is sleeping, all his material assets, everything that is linked up, to the material elements, and that's the vital energy in him to be able to perform his actions. So unless you have that vital energy, you're not able to speak, for example. You're not able to recite. You're not able to hear. So all that the vital energy that's that keeps us going, the senses for recording knowledge. So when you close your eyes, you could probably still be hearing something, you could still be smelling something, but when you're really sleeping, all your senses for recording knowledge is temporarily shut. That means that there is really no information that's coming from the external world. And the senses for working, and you're not using, since you're not working, you're not making use of any of your senses, so they're also temporarily shut down. And then the mind and the intelligence, unless you happen to be someone who gets a lot of dreams, that's when probably your subconscious is quite active, but otherwise when when a man is sleeping, and none of these can really arouse him. So, and this links up a lot to what was there in the previous verses, where the preceding gods were trying to rouse the Lord, but then any one part cannot really do it, because you need to work, whether you do it collectively or whether you do it individually, you still fail. And this arousing can only happen when the super soul helps him. Otherwise we would never arouse, we would never get up. And that's why it's also mentioned that each time we wake up in the morning, we it's a new day, because when we are sleeping, we almost don't get to the state which is as close to death as possible, in while we are still living, while we still have the life energy within us. So and so when we wake up in the morning, it's always about being grateful, about be thankful, that we still have another day. And as we mentioned, the Lord is also time. So, and as we transform in our journey materially, we can always be thankful. And when we start the day being thankful, for another day which is full of possibilities, full of opportunities for us to come closer to Him, then that's a good way to start. And that's how we normally begin. And I know Shailesh Prabhu, you mentioned this in one of the previous classes. So when we wake up, we can look at the palm, and then we can say Karagre Vasate Lakshmi. Karagre is like on the front of the palm, resides Lakshmi. Karamule Saraswati, which is towards the lower palm, and then Karamadhye Govindaha, and Govinda or Lord Krishna is sitting right in the center. Prabhate Karadarshanam. So when you start doing that, you are building the connection, with the Lord right at the start. So it's quite an auspicious way to get aroused. So you can get aroused. You need, the arouse. You need the Lord's sanction to wake up. But then how you wake up also makes a difference on how your day goes on. So if you wake up very very roughly, and then just get up and very abruptly, then you're not really, your consciousness is still coming to grips with what's happening in the world, and that could just put you on a wrong track. But the moment you do it in a very quiet manner, you do it in a reflective mode, and you see the Lord, because the Lord is very much with you, then you can also be roused in a very very positive manner, and you can also like lead your day in a more positive way. So, and as Prabhupada mentions here, he speaks about this original source of all the various sense organs, and it's not very easy to understand the relationship, because between the Virat Purusha, which is the Ishvara, or the presiding deities, or the living entities, because and it's helpful not to go too much into trying to understand what it means, but really to start building the connection with the Lord. And what Prabhupada also says is that only by devotional service and detachment can one perform. And in the next verse, in the last verse, we'll see a little bit on how we can build that connection. So the process of linking with Absolute is nothing but yoga. And here Prabhupada speaks about Bhakti Yoga, because you may have various ways of connecting with the Lord with self-realization, but the most effective way and the most sustainable way of connecting with the Supreme is through Bhakti Yoga. So moving on to the last verse for today. Tamasmin pratyagatmanam diya yoga pravrittaya bhaktya viruptya jnanena vivichyatmani chintayet. So would somebody like to read the purport, the translation and the purport?
I can read, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you.
Therefore, through devotion, determination, and advancement in spiritual knowledge acquired through concentrated devotional service, one should contemplate that supersoul as present in his very body, although simultaneously apart from it. Purport. One can realize the supersoul within oneself. He is within one's body, but apart from the body, or transcendental to the body. Although sitting in the same body as the individual soul, the supersoul has no affection for the body, whereas the individual soul does. Therefore, one has to detach himself from this material body by discharging devotional service. It is clearly mentioned here, Bhaktiya, that one has to execute devotional service to the Supreme. As it is stated in the first canto, second chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, canto 1.2.7, Vasudeva Bhagavate Bhakti Yoga Prayojita. When Vasudeva, the all-pervading Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is served in completely pure devotion, detachment from the material world immediately begins. The purpose of Sankhya is to detach oneself from material contamination. This can be achieved simply by devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When one is detached from the attraction of material prosperity, one can actually concentrate his mind upon the Supersoul. As long as the mind is distracted towards the material, there is no possibility of concentrating one's mind and intelligence upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his partial representation, Supersoul. In other words, one cannot concentrate one's mind and energy upon the Supreme unless one is detached from the material world. Following detachment from the material world, one can actually attain transcendental knowledge of the absolute truth. As long as one is entangled in sense enjoyment or material enjoyment, it is not possible to understand the absolute truth. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 18.54. One who is freed from material contamination is joyful and can enter into the devotional service. And by devotional service, he can be liberated. Shall I carry on, Prabhuji?
Yes, please.
In the Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, it is stated that one becomes joyful by discharging devotional service. In that joyful attitude, one can understand the science of God or Krishna consciousness, otherwise it is not possible. The analytical study of the elements of material nature and concentration on the mind upon the Supersoul are the sum and substance of the Sankhya philosophical system. The perfection of the Sankhya Yoga culminates in devotional service unto the absolute truth. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the third canto, 26th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Fundamental Principles of Material Nature. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Naina Mataji. This is, I just want to share an example, and we'll quickly, look at the key messages coming that Prabhupada has mentioned here. So I was it was a Easter break, and then and then we had planned out to go out, and we went to this part of East England, and I realized that I was really quite fascinated by this by the sea, the beach, the the parks, etc. And somewhere along the way, I felt that I was getting so much of a joy in just the travel and all the activities that we were doing, that I had almost forgotten about what it means to do devotional service, even for those 3 or 4 days. And then I asked myself, when I'm so attached to things which are happening at the material world, how can I really concentrate on the Lord? And I realized how easy it was for us to forget the Lord, to forget, thinking about, Him, when we are in this process of, sense enjoyment. And that just made me step back and say, um, am I doing something which is right? I mean, yes, of course, we all try to take holiday, we all want to, take a, break from our work, etc. But then, how do I do it in a manner that doesn't make me forget the Lord? And so towards the end of it, I started, of course, you do your chanting, but then, when you do the activities, you pretty much, forget. So always, I tried to make a conscious effort to link up, to say that, when I'm looking at the beach, when I'm looking at, some experiences that we are really trying to create, can I really be thankful to Krishna? Because unless, he is sanctioning this, it would not happen in the first place, because he caters to our desire. So Prabhupada mentions here that unless it's you have to detach yourself from material enjoyment, because if you don't do that, then your mind is going to be so distracted that it's not going to allow you to focus on the Lord. And that's where he says that in this passage, Lord Kapila says detachment and advancement in spiritual knowledge. Um, and you can acquire that through concentrated devotional service. It's not devotional service just I'll just do like a few minutes of devotional service on today. I'll forget about it the next day and then I'll do it again. It has to be something that has to be really sustained, that has to be done in a very concentrated manner as much as possible. And when you do that, you can also contemplate that super soul as present in this very body, in your body, although the super soul is very apart from it. And that realization, the more you contemplate on that, the more you start realizing it, although it may not come very easily, when we start off. So, as Prabhupada says here, the super soul doesn't have any affection for the body, whereas we have. So, we also know from the Bhagavad Gita that we know our soul, which is the kshetra, which is the field. But the super soul knows every body. Because every body, every living entity emanates, and the cause for that is the super soul. But so we have to detach ourselves from material body. And how do we do that? By having a desire to come closer to Krishna. We create opportunities for ourselves to perform devotional service. That could be in the form of reading, about from the Gita, the Bhagavatam. It could be about listening to lectures. It could be singing kirtan. It could be chanting. It could be going to the temple. It could be just contemplating on him. It's just going to be about glorifying him. It's going to be about hearing about his pastimes. There are so many ways by which you could really engage yourself. And um, and you know and the Krishna consciousness is such a it offers us so many activities, to be able to really discharge a devotional service. And what Prabhupada also mentions is that the purpose of Sankhya is really to detach ourselves from material contamination. Because why do we do an analytical study of the material universe? Because we can understand how we relate to it. We can understand how we relate to the Lord, how everything relates and interacts with each other. And that particular knowledge should serve to detach ourselves, saying that I don't want to live in this world of misery. And as Jennifer Mataji just pointed out, I don't want to fear death, because I know that it could be liberating. Uh, but what I do want to fear is fear of a rebirth, especially in a body that doesn't allow me to, progress in my consciousness. That is something that I need to be really very, be very fearful about. And then how can I really mold my activities, mold my life today? In a way that allows me to not take rebirth as much as possible, or at least to complete as much of my karmic reactions, and come as close to Krishna as possible in this particular lifetime. And we did speak about the mind being distracted, and as long as the mind is distracted towards the material, it's very difficult to concentrate your mind and intelligence upon the Supreme Personality. And then once you detach yourself from the material world, and it is a gradual process, you can attain the transcendental knowledge. And once you're free from this material contamination, when you become more equanimous, when you're not worried about happiness or distress, when for you happiness and distress is the same, joy and sorrow, means the same. You even when there is suffering, then you ask yourself, what is it that I can learn from the suffering? So when you do that, when you liberate yourself from the dualities of this material nature, then you can see that you become a lot more joyful, and then you find yourself more liberated. And when you find yourself liberated, you don't really have to fear rebirth, because you know that Krishna is your dear friend, and he will, when you surrender to him, he will really take full care of you. And that's really what the what the entire essence and the spirit of Krishna consciousness is. So it's really about how do I build and strengthen my connection to Krishna, and how do I do that through detachment and through performing devotional service. So, to very quickly sum up this particular chapter and these verses, so Lord Kapila speaks about the fundamental principles of material nature, where he speaks about how the material nature was created, what is his role in this, and then what is really the interaction between the jiva, which is us, the prakriti, which is the material, the modes of material nature, and the Lord, and how nothing in this world can really nothing in this world can really happen. Even a blade of grass cannot really cannot sway in the wind unless it has the Lord's sanction. And how, as devotees or as spiritual seekers, our key desire should be to detach ourselves from this material world, and refocus our energies and our mind and intelligence on building and strengthening the connection with Krishna. So I pause here, and I know that we have exceeded time, but happy to have any one or two reflections or questions.
Hare Krishna, Madan Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Pati Mataji.
As always, such a wonderful class, and you give so many practical examples that one can relate to. Especially the last one that you mentioned towards the end was, like when you went away over Easter and you saw this beautiful, beach and so on. And it kind of resonates with most of us when you see these beautiful, things around you, the sea, the sand, the waves, the flowers, birds, bees, and you think, wow. And then I try and connect it, wow, this is God's creation. And at the same time, you have to bring yourself back to, earth, saying earth literally, saying this is his material creation. And it's always like, the scales of material attachment is so much heavier than the spiritual path. So yeah, it did resonate with me. So it's just so true that when you go out and you think this it all becomes sense enjoyment, and although I try to level it with yes, this is all God's creation, but then yes, it is material creation. So yeah, I mean the practical examples you gave were so helpful. So that really illustrated all your points. So thank you very much for today's class, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Mataji. And I think that's what, because spirituality is not, something which is, which is completely away. Because unless you really embed that into your day-to-day life, it's going to be quite difficult for you to really do. So how do we balance the various roles? So my realization from that, and I'm not sure that how completely got that right, was really around saying, each time I go on a holiday, how do I still remember him? And what I've been doing, sometimes what you could do is you could actually, carry a small Archa Vigraha, and if you go to a particular hotel, before when you just enter, you can actually you create your sacred space anywhere you want to go. So that way, that I found quite helpful, because that's what we've been doing in the last few trips. So carry our deity with us, place them there, and then end the day, start the day, paying your obeisances, and then the day can be just joyful. Thank you so much. So we will wrap up the class today. So thank you so much for joining. So please join me for the Vaishnav mantra. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya
Kripasindhu
eva
eva cha
cha
patitanam
patitanam
pavanebhyo
pavanebhyo
vaishnavebhyo
vaishnavebhyo
namo
namo
namaha.
namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki,
Ki Jai.
Prabhupada ki,
Jai.
Srimad Bhagavatam ki.
Jai.
Thank you
you.
so much for joining today. So hopefully, you have some moments of reflection and have a blissful evening as we, take our journey in Krishna consciousness forward.
Thank you,
Krishna.
Prabhuji.
Thank you,
Thank you, Prabhuji,
Prabhuji.
for the very
Thank you,
nice
Prabhuji.
class.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.